welcome to the official Lakes International Comic Art Festival podcast. My name's Ian.
And my name's Nikki, bringing you the best in comics and graphic novels and updates from the festival.
Hello and welcome to the Lakes International Comic Art Festival podcast, episode 33. My name's Ian.
And I'm Nikki.
I'm funny now.
No, you're not funny. You weren't funny beforehand, and you're still not funny now.
The funniest man in the world.
You actually, even that car outside didn't agree with you then, bibbing as it went past. Why? Why are you the funniest man in the world, Ian?
Because I now know how to write comedy.
Wow. It only took half a day, and now you're a genius at comedy writing. Gasp.
Yeah.
Go on then, show us.
Show you? Well, I can't.
Go on,
I'm not.
Go on, make me laugh.
Let's explain what's going on, shall we?
Go on.
I went to a comedy writing day with the Lakes International Comic Art Festival, supported by them, with Jayne Postlethwaite leading the way, teaching us how to write comedy. Or, well, it was writing comedy, but it was more about getting the ideas and how to flow those ideas onto the paper.
The structure, didn't it?
Yeah. It could be used for writing books or anything, to be honest, in some ways. Or anything that's sort of short. Yeah, it was interesting.
Go on, break down your day.
Well, it was about 6 of us, and the first bit involved saying what was nice about an item of clothing somebody was wearing to the left. I'm not going to use any names or anything, or it's a private thing. It's only what I went through. And then had to abuse said item as well.
See, I would have died on the spot. I would have died anyway, which is why I didn't go.
We had to do bits such as taking an object out of a bag and then creating a short piece on said object. To be fair, at no point did they say it had to be funny, but you feel you have to try.
That was good for you, wasn't it? That you didn't have to be funny.
You didn't have to be funny.
Yeah.
You know, you do it in a black medium, dark.
You read me some of the things and you weren't very dark. In fact,
I did
booked
on
you
one.
in to see a therapist.
Yeah. And it sort of ended with a creation of a story, which had basically 5 minutes, minute segment each time, which, excuse me, I just burped, which I thought was quite good. Do you not like my final story that I created?
It was very interesting.
Yeah?
Yes. It could have legs.
Really?
Shoes and legs.
So this is leading to a second class.
Is that the ukulele one, yeah? Where you're going to learn how to... Oh, right, okay. More comedy writing.
And then possibly the performance of said comedy piece.
That's good, because I've got the tomatoes in now ready to throw at you.
At the Lakes International Comic Art Festival 2018 on
Heckling
the
to
Saturday
be
night,
encouraged.
which we're going to talk about later. So, yeah. So I'm putting together, or will be, the idea is a 5-minute segment, and it's whether I do it on my teenage years as a nerd.
Oh, that's a bad place to go, surely.
Well, bad in what way?
Well, it was so sad, your teenage years. Yeah.
I've got different memories.
Are you going for sympathetic laughter?
No, they were fun in my own little way.
I was in your own world.
All the other is looking at my retail experience. And
I think this is the way forward.
Creating a character, store manager based on said experiences.
Yeah. I like that.
It's more
idea.
whether I want to be a character or want to be myself. That's the thing.
I think that's something you will have to probably do both things and see which one is funnier or which one you're more comfortable doing, which is the most important thing.
That's if I dare do it at the end of the
day.
I
know. I wouldn't actually throw things at you. Yes, I would.
But if I do that, then we are doing a karaoke.
Okay. Well, we're going to do the karaoke, aren't we?
There we go.
We need the cheesiest song ever. Any suggestions?
So the full guide for the festival is out. We're going to talk about the evening segments after the break. I think that will be today's episode. We've also got Robbie Morrison interviewed. Lovely chap.
Very nice.
Yeah, I ballsed up on the interview.
It's like every interview now. It's like you've got the Ian Rankin curse.
So Robbie said he used to read the Hornet, and I immediately jumped to the Green Hornet.
I was busy shaking my head at you at this point, and you just went for it again, like the Wikipedia moment with Ian Rankin. It was like, no, Ian, no. Oh, he's done it.
You can listen to the interview as much as you want, because I got rid of that bit.
The choice of editing.
Because I am so embarrassed. I have, however, ordered a copy of the comic from
Hornet.
the 60s, so I can say I've actually read it.
Yeah, that's how to atone for your sin there.
Yes. He was disappointed in me.
He was disappointed.
I don't blame him.
Hang your head in shame.
Yes, but it was a great interview.
Really, really interesting. I really enjoyed listening to him. He's got a lovely voice as well.
Bit of news first.
Mm-hmm.
So Disney has bought Fox. Like, it's gone through now.
Oh,
other than the final
it's
bit.
happened, is it?
$71 billion deal.
Oh, I wish I'd said I had that in my bank account. I could have done that.
They've got to get rid of a few bits, news sites, depending on the countries and so forth. But the main thing is they've got the Marvel properties back. So there's only Spider-Man, I think, that's missing now.
He's with Sony, isn't he?
Yeah.
Unless Disney are going to buy them as well.
They ain't going to let that go, that's for sure.
No.
So,
well, they might, for a lot of Wonga.
I don't know, it probably brings in more, let's be honest, I don't think.
You're probably right.
Yeah. So that means Fantastic Four.
Oh, another
X-Men
reboot.
Could be back, but not reboot. Well, it would be a reboot, but it would be the last reboot, wouldn't it? That would be the thing.
I don't know. I'm a bit fed up with reboots now, personally.
Well, the last Spider-Man wasn't... Yeah, it was a reboot, but it didn't go back to today's start, and that's what they need to do. Just bring the characters like we know them. We don't need the origins.
No, please stop doing origins. Yeah.
So that's looking good.
Mm-hmm.
Happy birthday as well to the Beano.
Yes, did you see that you can go and join their club again?
Well, you can buy the kit.
Yes, but see, my brother was in the club. I was in the Desperate Dan Pie club, so I'm waiting for that now.
I don't think the Dandy's going anymore.
Is it still there?
The Dandy thing.
Is the Dandy dead? The Dandy's dead.
The Dandy's dead. Please tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the Dandy died.
Oh.
Quite a while ago.
Oh, that's... You mean I'm no longer a member of the Desperate Dan Pie Eaters Club?
Well, I'm sure you're still a member, but it ain't going to get you anywhere.
I had a little sheriff's badge and everything.
No, dear.
I'm quite upset now. My brother had the Nasher one, because it was hairy, the Nasher badge.
So that ran until 2012 physically, and then 2013 online.
Oh, it's been dead for a bit.
Yeah.
Oh, how dare they?
But the Beano, first appeared 30th of July 1938.
Oh, it was only 2.
So, in fact, next time we're shopping, I want to grab, if we've got the special edition of the Beano that's just come out.
Yes.
Which I think David Walliams is editor.
Mm-hmm.
So, 80 years.
I'm just upset the Dandy went.
See, now here's the thing. I didn't know the Hornet, but I know the Beano, and that's been going a lot longer.
Yeah.
I know it stopped going the Hornet, but yeah.
No, it's not. Yeah, well, it stopped before you were born, which may be why you never knew about it. But it was one of the ones that I knew from by name, like Hotspur and all that. But yeah, it's not one I've ever had my little grubby paws on.
So, from what you remember of the Beano, since you didn't actually get it yourself,
my brother got it. We used to swap over our annuals.
What were your favourite characters?
Billy Whiz.
Billy Whiz?
Yeah, I liked that one. There was another one as well. Was it Calamity? No, Calamity Jane. Was she in the Beano?
I don't recognise it.
It wasn't. Oh,
but it could well have been.
There was one, and I loved the drawings of it. It could have been in the Dandy. I can't remember now. It was a later edition, a comic, but it had so much going on in the background, and the drawings were a little bit more grotesque, and I rather like them.
Okay.
I can't remember what it was. He always got into trouble, and it was always bad luck.
Bass Street Kids were always good fun.
You see now, you got Corky the Cat. Was that Dandy or Beano?
That was, I'm not sure.
I see. I get confused because, like I said, me and my brother used to swap our comics over, so we always got to read each other's. So, but no, Billy Whiz was my
Calamity James, is that what you were
Calamity
thinking of?
James, there you go.
That's the Beano. Ivy the Terrible.
Yes, I quite liked Ivy the Terrible.
Yeah, there was so many though, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And I used to get it weekly. My mum would get it.
Yeah, my mum got ours, yeah.
And then I moved on to 2000 AD. Quite a big jump.
I stuck with the Beano until I got the Look-In annuals.
Oh, dear.
The Look-In magazine when I was a teenager.
Let's not admit these things. No.
I used to cut out the Garfield strips and put them in a scrapbook.
So happy birthday, Beano, anyway.
Happy birthday.
There's been a few new trailers out because it has been the San Diego Comic-Con, of course.
Yes.
So, what did you make of Aquaman? That's great. That's the review.
I'm. It's a bit like all the others, isn't it? When the trailers come out, I'm a bit like, well, okay. It looks like
just look like another. It looks a bit like Black Panther underwater.
Yeah, it does a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, look at this amazing place you didn't know you existed, and oh, you might be king of here now. Oh, you're going to have to fight your brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was a bit, and I thought this. Obviously, it's got to rely on CG, but I felt that it has to rely on it so heavily. I'm thinking it's. I don't know. I don't think it's.
I think they've got
future-proofed itself, has it? I think we're going to look at it in like 10 years' time. And go, well, that
they
was
have
naff.
no option if they wanted to do it. That's the thing with that.
Yeah, I suppose. I think because I'm not overly sold on the actors that I don't know. I'm not. We need to watch
Justice League
so I can see if I actually.
Black Manta though.
Oh, that looks brilliant.
I mean, you wouldn't expect the stupid-looking helmet.
That's cool.
But it looks ridiculous. But it's
from the
perfect
comic.
from the comics.
So that's fine. So I'm not sure. I'm a bit thinking it's paint by numbers. I'm a bit upset.
The next one, Shazam!
Yeah. I'm probably looking forward to this one more.
I was going to say that looks really
because
good
this
fun.
looks more like, fun. But is it then trying to copy Marvel? You see,
no, because the character itself, it's a bit more lighthearted anyway.
So, and they need to inject a bit more of lightheartedness into their franchise. So I'm quite looking forward. I'm looking forward more to that one than Aquaman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And the final
also, they know
one,
where to turn the light switches on in Shazam, whereas Aquaman is like all the other ones, dark.
The final one is Glass.
Oh, I can't wait for Glass.
No.
I'll say it properly though. Glass.
So the third in the M. Night Shyamalan trilogy.
I'm sure that's exactly how you say his name.
Can't say his name. The Unexpected trilogy.
Yes, the one we didn't realise was going to be a trilogy.
No.
Until
follows, obviously, Glass being the main villain from Unbreakable.
Yes.
And it follows, obviously, him.
Yeah.
And what goes on between him and the other two characters. And I've forgotten his name.
From Split.
And McAvoy's character from Split.
Yeah.
Looks really interesting.
Well, we enjoyed both. Well, we watched Unbreakable again, didn't we, the other day?
We did, just to catch up.
And it's still good. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. It's a twist on superhero genre. And I like how I prefer films going like that and twisting it slightly and not doing the normal, oh, look, here's a baddie, have a fight. I prefer not knowing what's going to happen so much.
Because we haven't got a clue.
No,
who's the actual
idea.
baddie, let's be honest. We don't really know.
No. And, what's Mr. Glass doing with the whole thing? So, and
the way McAvoy's Beast character bounds across the screen at one point.
Oh, yes, I was a bit disconcerted.
He's a bit spooky.
A bit spooky.
Yeah. Here's hoping that I keep saying that Willis brings his A game back. We don't want none of that Die Hard Willis, please. We want good Willis.
Die Hard Willis.
Yes. We want good Willis. So, yeah, that'll do for news.
Well done.
Let's do a review. Just one this week. Tumult.
Yes.
John Harris Dunning and Michael Kennedy. Give me a bit of the blur.
Such a heavy book.
It is.
Right in my hands right now. Adam Whistler topples himself into emotional freefall by impulsively ending his seemingly perfect relationship. He meets the bewitching and troubled Morgan and is instantly ensnared in her life. When he learns that people close to her are being killed, he's determined to protect her. But perhaps it's Adam who needs protection from Morgan. Dun, dun, dun.
So this story sort of takes you on until about halfway through. Severe twists of you don't really know what's going on.
I think it takes you all to the last page, personally. I love this book.
It does, but until about halfway, there's a lot of different other characters. There's sort of other females in his life, I suppose, as well. And it's the initial story is about him. Is a guy in a relationship that's coming to an end. Yeah,
it's just fizzling out, isn't it? I think more than anything.
He meets a girl, has an affair.
One night standing.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Breaks up his relationship.
And then that changes his whole look on life.
Well, he plunges, doesn't he? He knows he's going into this, abyss, it says on the back, doesn't it? And he literally falls into, he hits bottom.
Yeah.
And then Morgan steps into his life. And then that kind of overtakes him in a way, but also brings him back to, because he was always saying, he was feeling numb. He felt nothing, did he? But when she comes into his life, he starts feeling again. Mm-hmm. And then, so I think they both rebuild each other in a way throughout the whole book.
And then in the background, there's some murders going on.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a whodunit conspiracy theory style.
Yeah, but then it goes all X-Files on us, doesn't it?
It does a bit.
And I love that. I loved it when it's like plunging into Morgan's backstory. Mm-hmm. And what about when all those other characters suddenly appeared? Strange character. I mean, you get a talking dog at one point, and that made you think. And then for the twist of it to flip round again and explain what those characters are. I'm trying not to give any spoilers. And I found that really clever. It was really engaging. It was a very grown up. It was a fantastic story. And it's got to be my favourite book this year so far. My
favourite bits were, and this is a nerd talking, they do jump into
films. The films, yeah.
And how they link the films into the particular part of the story.
Yes,
and the characters that's going on in a very nerdy fashion.
Ah, so you would take it that way. Well, I liked the Morgan storyline, how that was developing and encroaching onto Adam. Oh, yeah. It's a fantastic book. It'd make an amazing film.
The art's very different.
Yes, yeah.
Minimal colours per frame is probably a way of saying it.
It's almost pop arty.
Yeah, but certain characters have certain colours, and everything changes in the frames, in the panel. Yeah. It'll stick to a colour for a character, then the panel will change completely for another character, and it sort of makes them stand out.
Yeah, and when you go more into Morgan, that's a different... I mean, even the pages are different colours.
Yeah.
So it goes into that as well. It's... Yeah, and then when you bring the bits from the films, though, they're almost like a photocopy.
They are, in very realistic sort of...
Again, that's another way of looking at the art. But yeah, it's very up close. It's very facial. It's very bold.
There's a lot of facial, a lot of text. It feels like... I'm trying to think of a director. A Tarantino movie who does a lot of dialogue and talks, he really gets the characters out through the dialogue, not necessarily the actions, but the dialogue itself. It feels very much like that. And it's not, I say it's a lot of text. There's a lot of text, but it's not a lot of text in a panel. It's a lot of panels giving a chance to really bring out the story.
But I also found with the way the panels are set out, the way the art's done, your mind, like when you read a book, and your mind then plays the pictures, doesn't it? This carried on. So between the panels, I found that my mind was doing the connections.
It's a very simple layout as well, though. Did you see that? It's generally either 6 or 5 for the majority of
Which
panels.
is why I think your mind can then
there's
put
none
in
of this
the gaps.
Bar one, I think there's one page where it's a full page.
Well, you got with the
1
tarot
or 2
cards,
at the most. There's not many.
When they came up. So
yeah,
the
majority is 5 or 6 panels. So very simplistic, so it just allows the story and the text. So yeah, check it out.
Oh, definitely check it out.
It's SelfMadeHero.
I can't I'm just buy this book. It has been definitely my favourite one.
We're hoping to get the guys on shortly. It'll be 2 episodes time for a chat about the book and about why they created and how they got to creating this particular book. Because I think for the artist, it's his first graphic novel as well.
Really?
So,
wow.
And that's a beast of a book to create. So, go and check that out.
Definitely.
Let's say SelfMadeHero.
Yeah.
Well worth checking out. So now we've got the interview with Robbie Morrison. Ignore any mention towards the end of
Hornet.
Hornet. Didn't happen. And we'll come back after the break to talk about the festival.
Okay.
Mike's Mutterings.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of Mike's Mutterings. I had another strange convergence of my many geek hobbies recently, and I'm currently in the midst of a bit of a zombie buzz. Firstly, I stumbled on a showing of Land of the Dead at some stupid time in the morning, and enjoyed it so much I immediately dug out Survival of the Dead and Diary of the Dead to watch too. We'd also watched World War Z again, which, while being a great film, actually pales in comparison to the original book by Max Brooks. One of my favourite books ever. It's a collection of stories from around the world, in chronological order-ish, told first-hand by those who survived the zombie apocalypse. So that became my new bedtime book. It's these stories that are kind of collected in to make a single narrative for the film, but I also received a copy of Last Day's Zombie Apocalypse. It's a miniature skirmish game that's based around classic Romero zombies. So, while in the heady zombie haze, I treated myself to the hardcover collected edition of 2014's Empire of the Dead, the George A. Romero written Marvel graphic novel. So I thought I'd dedicate this episode to giving a solid review of this important Romero work. Firstly, yes, it really was written by Romero himself. There is a little foreword by him that explains that his first love of fantasy came from comics before film. The book is in 3 acts, each containing issue 1 to 5 of that act as originally published. Act 1 is drawn by Alex Maleev in a very gritty, grimy style. His work suggests extensive use of photo reference, much like Sean Phillips does for Kill or Be Killed. Matt Hollingsworth's colouring is suitably dark and muted, and suited to the artwork perfectly. Panels go quickly from sweeping cinematic action angles to tight and close for more personal moments and little chats. The premise is quickly established. We're in Manhattan, some years after the initial outbreak, I think, and there is some semblance of normality. A strong leader in the form of elected Mayor Shandrake and his own militia create sort of protected zones, and NYPD still police the people. Key players emerge quickly. There's Dr. Penny Jones, who's helping to change the behaviour of the zombies, or stinkers as they are known here colloquially, and the appropriately named Paul Barnum, who organises the popular zombie gladiatorial fights at the Circus Maximus Arena. We also get our first glimpse of the mysterious stinker called X, formerly a SWAT officer called Francis Xavier, but she is now a member of the Shambling Dead. It's here that we also first see something from a zombie's point of view, and we see how her thoughts are jumbled up with remnants of her previous life still bleeding through. Like Land of the Dead, there is clearly divided society, with the elite governing enjoying a vastly more luxurious life than those on the street. The twist, though, is that these ruling elite are vampires. Did I just say vampires? Yes, I did, and this is not a spoiler. The book jacket declares the tagline, "Zombies versus vampires, with humans caught in the middle." It did throw me a little at first, but his vampires are very much like his zombies. Like the dead, the undead are technically immortal, and are very much of a sort of disease of the blood type vampire, transferred just like zombies by bite. They're not the zombies of mythology, and they're more mundane vulnerabilities. Like the headshot for a zombie, it's a heart shot for a vamp. The vamps have a very hierarchical organisation, and they enjoy power and status completely hidden amongst the humans. Several storylines are quickly realised. We have Dr. Penny and Barnum trying to train the more evolved, smarter stinkers. Living Dead SWAT Officer X, the smartest deadhead by far, finds a human orphan girl called Jo on the streets and places her under her protection. We learn more of the vampiric mayor, his nephew, their militia cronies. Drifters Ashley and Dixie also enter the fray, looking to take the relative safe haven of New York for everything it has. But they seem to be just a vanguard for something much larger coming this way. These are pretty much all the main story threads and characters set up, so we'll go into spoiler-free mode from here on. Act 2 sees Dalibor Talaik take over as artist, as well as inking duties with Rick Magyar and Goran Sudsuka. Colour artist is Rain Berido. The panelling layout style remains the same, but the art feels a little less dark and gritty. The separate plot threads progress at a good rate. Political machinations are exposed along with new vampiric horrors, and the city sort of suddenly comes under attack from unknown forces. As we go into Act 3, it's now Andrea Mutis, Turner's artist and inker, with help from Robert Poggi. Rain Burrito continues to provide the same colour palette throughout this final arc. All the stories converge for a very cinematic blockbuster ending, making it well worth the read and very satisfying. I appreciated the art throughout the whole book, but it was Alex Maleev who really stood out for me in Act 1. I know his work previously from Civil War and New Avengers titles, and his cover for issue 5 for the series is my favourite by far. It's also used on the back cover of this hardback collected edition that I bought. It's a beautifully coloured rendition of Officer X with a burning torch in her hand. But how does all this rate as a slice of Romero? Very well, I think. It's hard to be impartial if you are a massive Romero fanboy, though. It's a solid story, and unlike later Dead films, he was not constrained by escalating CGI costs to tell the story that you really wanted to. Romero writes clear characters, and he successfully achieves in getting the reader invested in them. My only slight reservation is that he's kind of famous for each of the Dead series having an in-your-face social commentary. This message or messages may have been a little bit more diluted here, but it does kind of build on Land of the Dead's message of inequality in society, but perhaps manages to go further into the realms of the New World Order. The fortunes of the human, zombie and vampires rise and fall throughout, like many preceding empires through history, which I guess is what the title refers to. George A. Romero sadly passed away on July the 16th last year, 2017. At the time of his death, he was working on a new film. He was about to start Road of the Dead. It was planned to be the first film that he would not direct himself, but by co-writer Matt Berman. The plot seemed to borrow quite healthily from Empire of the Dead, with a human populace that's pacified by gladiatorial games, this time, though, in the form of a Mad Max rollerball-style road war. But production status is unknown, as well as a planned TV adaptation of Empire of the Dead. I'm really hoping both these projects come to fruition. I'll leave you with a quote, in fact probably my favourite quote from George A. Romero, and it kind of sums up every film in the zombie genre. A zombie film is not fun without a bunch of stupid people running around and observing how they fail to handle the situation. Too true, George, too true.
We have with us today Robbie Morrison. Thank you very much, Robbie, for coming on the show.
No problem, Ian. Nice to meet you over podcast.
That's very true. Preferably it'd be in a bar, but this will do. So what comics were you into when you were growing up?
Mostly when I was young, but interest in comics started. My grandfather was buying me copies of the Hornet and the Hotspur from which were published by DC Thompson many moons ago. All long gone these days, but sort of fondly remembered, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you get into writing comics from that then?
Well, I suppose I was a big fan of comics and a big reader of comics up till about the age of 12 or 13, and I kind of fell away from it after that. But when I was at college, a friend of mine there, a fellow called Graham Thompson, he was still quite a big comics fan, and he sort of introduced me to some of the newer comics that were coming out at that time, which was Watchmen, The Dark Knight Returns, that sort of stuff, which seemed at the time to be breaking new ground, and it kind of rekindled my interest. But at which point, by that point, I decided I quite fancied trying to make a living as a writer. Okay. So comics, I hadn't really considered them. I was sort of writing television scripts, writing attempts at novels, and I thought comics, when my interest was rekindled, I figured, well, this was something else I could try my hand at. And, complete surprise to me, but comics was the medium that started buying scripts off me fairly soon after I started writing them and submitting them to various editors and publishers. And I kind of got into it that way.
Okay. So how did you find writing comics in comparison to, say, writing scripts for TV or so forth? Was it very similar, or did you find it a different challenge?
Well, they're all different mediums. I mean, there's certainly sort of similarities between the mediums, but comics, I think a lot of times comics, it's the limitations are probably more intense than other mediums, because you can only fit so many panels per page, so much dialogue, so many words of dialogue in each balloon. And you only have so many pages per episode because of the way comics publishing works. And in the UK, it tends to be in either 5 or 6 page episodes that they're published, or in the US, 20 to 24 page episodes. Mm-hmm. So it's quite disciplined. It's probably slightly more disciplined than other mediums. I should say at that point, I wasn't actually writing for television or anything then. I was basically, I was in my early 20s and I was attempting, vaguely writing for, I just wanted to write, and I was trying my hand at any medium. And as I said, comics was the one that seemed sort of picked me up quite quickly.
So was the Dread magazine your first published work then, was it?
It was my first published work, but it wasn't the first scripts I sold. Okay. The first scripts I sold were actually to DC Thomson, who incidentally were the publishers of the Hotspur and the Hornet that I had started out reading. I had been submitting scripts to various people, and DC Thomson's used to produce a series of comics called Starblazers, which were basically a science fiction version of if you're familiar with the Commando books, or are you too young for them as well?
I do know them.
Yes.
He's not that young.
That sort of digest format that's almost half the size of your regular comic book. Yeah. So I'd written I'd been submitting ideas and scripts to any publisher I could think of. And I decided I would sit down and write a full script for Starblazers. When I submitted it, the editor at the time, a fellow called Bill McLaughlin, got back to me and said, they were really impressed with the script. In fact, it was the best first script they had ever received. And in fact, it was such a good first script that could I confirm to them and guarantee that it was all my own work and I hadn't ripped it off from anywhere else. So I had to send them a letter saying, of course, outraged, of course it's all my own work, etc., etc. And after that, they were quite keen to keep using me, and I probably wrote 4 or 5 Starblazer scripts, which at the time were fairly substantial. They're about 64 pages is the digest format, so that's really 32 pages of regular script. And I'm really looking forward to them coming out. And the week before my first Starblazer was due to be published, DC Thomson's cancelled the title, so all the scripts I had written for them and all the stories that have been drawn up have never ever been seen.
So are they hidden somewhere, or have they been destroyed like many of the arts and the works back then?
Oh, I have no idea. I presume they're in some big vault in DC Thomson Towers up in Dundee at the moment. I saw the artwork for the first script I had done. And I was really pleased with that at the time. But no, I've no idea. It's possibly hidden away somewhere.
It's a shame. So much work.
A treasure chest of material, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, you then moved on with the magazine. Just looking at the catalogue of work you did for those guys, it's huge. How did you find sort of the cross between working on characters like Dredd and then creating your own work for the magazine as well?
Well, I think probably every writer will admit they probably prefer to work on your own creation if possible. But I loved writing Dredd and writing the various other characters that were sort of 2000 already had running, because I had been dipping into them over the years, and I read them and it's also quite a challenge to sort of, Dredd's been written by the likes of John Weiner and Alan Grant, who are also going to be guests at the cartoon festival, the Lakes this year. So you're kind of following, and it's fairly daunting footsteps to follow in. So really, half the time I was just hoping he would try and produce work that was hopefully as good as theirs. And Dredd's an interesting character, and there's a lot of black comedy in it, so which appealed to me, as well as the science fiction aspects and the crime aspects. I'm a big fan of crime fiction, so that also appealed to me. You probably have to ask the readers what they thought of them after.
It does feel with Dredd, though, it may not be the case. It's quite an open character and an open world to do almost what you want. Bar, say, probably a few strict rules of Dredd can't take his helmet on, so on and so on and so forth. But is it fairly open like that?
Yeah, that's very true. That was one of the things that I really did enjoy about Dredd, is that 1 week you can write a story that's one of the most over-the-top and ridiculous pieces of comedy you could come up with. And then the next issue, you could write something that's tonally would be completely different. You could, very serious, very dark, or even quite poignant or touching. Basically, Dredd as a character is a brilliant character, and that stories can revolve around them. But those particular stories, while Dredd himself doesn't change in his outlook and his view of the law and the justice system never changes, you can basically fit him into any scenario, whether it be comic or tragedy or whatever. Basically, that he can do anything with Dredd, really, except, of course, take his helmet off.
So obviously you moved on then after doing a few years with the Megazine to Nikolai Dante. How did that character come about?
Dante was probably just developed from. It was the first time, I think, Steve McManus at 2000 AD had asked me if I'd wanted. I'd been working in the magazine for a while, and Steve McManus had taken over 2000 AD again and asked me if I fancied submitting any ideas to it. And he put me in touch with John Tomlinson, who was the editor at the time. Steve was the managing editor at Fleetway. He put me in touch with John Tomlinson, who was the editor, and it was basically the nice thing about with the magazine, you had to tie it into Mega City 1 and Dredd's continuity and world. But with 2000 AD, really it was the sky was the limit. So I basically looked at what was in the comic at the time, and everything. It was still all the stories that had been running for a long time, such as Judge Dredd or Rogue Trooper or Slane, and all the characters seemed like grim, gritty veterans of future conflicts or urban crime. And I just kind of thought, let's just do the exact opposite of this. And I ended up coming up with starts off as a fairly light-hearted, swashbuckling adventure story with a young thief and adventurer called Nikolai Dante, who discovers that he's actually an illegitimate member of the Romanov dynasty. I should probably say it's set in 25th century Russia, which is still ruled with an iron fist by Tsar Vladimir the Conqueror. And I kind of decided you would make Dante was a young guy. He had a real lust for life. He was a womanizer. He was an adventurer, a gambler. And deep down at heart, he had heroic elements, but they had to be drawn out of him. And I think it seemed to strike a chord, and that it was very different from everything else that was appearing in 2000 at the time. I think one of the other things, a lot of times with the characters in 2000, they always didn't seem to change very much. When we had decided with Dante, we'll make him young, and he'll age as the series progresses, and he'll change, and characters will die, the scenarios the world itself will change round about him.
I think with Simon's art as well, it was certainly bright in comparison to the world of Dredd, Rogue Trooper and so forth. Really stands out. It's gorgeous.
Well, at that time, 2000 AD was going through the fashion for fully painted artwork, which some people were really good at fully painted artwork, and others were, it tended to look a bit muddy, and the printing didn't quite bring out the quality of the artwork. So when I think Frank Whiteley was the first artist, he stepped away from the fashion for the painted artwork that had been around for a while. He went back to fairly bright and colourful pen and ink work, and Simon was much the same as that. He was following in the same sort of line, so it looked different as well as probably felt different in tone to the rest of the comic, I think.
Definitely. Could you have imagined it's lasting so long when you first started?
No, I was a young man at the time. Really. I was an old man when it finished. No, I suppose in my own head, initially when you pitch a series or you're working in a series in the early days, really, I was just hoping to get a second series initially. So while I had general ideas for an epic ongoing saga, you never know initially whether if you can never tell what the readers will like or what will go down well. So no, I certainly didn't expect to be writing it. I think I wrote it over a period of 15 years is pretty much what the whole series runs to. So no, if you told me I'd have spent 15 years on it, I'd have probably ran a mile at the time. So, my God, I'll never have ideas enough to run that long length of time. As it was, once you get into it, you have more ideas than you can ever use.
Yeah. How did it feel to bring it to a close?
Well, it had always been a plan to end it. Yeah, it was sad. I was pleased that we had managed to. We did what we said. Originally, the plan was to do a large, after the first couple of series when we had planned it as a large ongoing epic, that we did have an end in mind, which again, I think one of the things in comics is so many things are open-ended that they're never going to finish, and people just, quite often, they lose steam along the way. And I think I was pleased that we did bring it to an end. And I think all the best stories have an ending. They don't, otherwise they just go on and on and on and on. So yeah, it was, but I do still miss Dante. I miss that sort of swashbuckling adventure that there's still not enough of them round, I don't think.
I must admit, with all the TV stuff coming from 2008 at the minute, I do feel that would make a good TV series. I really do. Would love to see that happen one day, if only.
Well, I wouldn't be averse to that myself.
No.
You never know. Anything's possible. I'd like to think there's enough material there, and it has an epic feel that would hopefully suit the kind of television that's around now. I mean, when we first did Dante, there was television interest in it at one point, and we did produce a TV Bible, but this was before the days of Netflix and Amazon or any of that sort of thing. It was probably too ambitious back then, but yeah, I would like to think that these days it's something you could do, and who knows, you never know.
You never know, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately they won't be casting me as Dante anymore. I'm past it now.
I'm sure there's plenty of other roles.
They wouldn't have done it at the time either way, but
around the time as well, was it you did White Death? That was quite a while ago now, wasn't it? Because originally when I found out about it, it was with the reprint edition. What gave you the, I suppose, desire to write a story such as that?
Well, I think White Death is one of these projects that you wanted to do something a little different. I think comics, I grew up reading, as I told you, comics like The Hotspur and the Hornet, which were anthology comics that featured a large variety of stories. There would be a science fiction story, there would be a historical adventure, there would be a comedy, there would be a war story. And I kind of grew up with that, sort of enjoying that variety. I think sadly the comics industry, to a large extent, it's maybe getting better now, but to a large extent there was a period there where really a lot of what was being published was just science fiction or superheroes. It was hard to get any interest in any other genres, and so I really just wanted to write a story that could have appeared as a novel or a television series or a film, or basically just something that didn't have to rely on the usual tropes of comic books of science fiction and superheroes. Unfortunately, Charlie Adlard is of a like mind, and he had been experimenting with a new style of artwork. Instead of the usual pen and ink drawing, that he'd been doing. He started playing around with chalks and charcoals and drawn on grey paper. And he sort of thought that it would work well for a historical story, or maybe something set in World War One. And he asked me if I had any ideas. And it just so happened that I did, because a couple of years before that, on I think the BBC or Channel 4, I had watched a documentary about avalanches. And just one wee little brief fact in this documentary, it said that in World War One, in the mountain ranges between Italy and Austria, the opposing forces, the Italians and the Austro-Hungarians, they would fire cannons into the mountains to deliberately cause avalanches, which would to try and take out enemy troops. And it was just one of these little facts that stuck in my mind afterwards. And I'm thinking, I mean, war is hell. But the very fact that even back then, and then, you know, over 100 years ago now, they were almost turning nature itself into a weapon of war. That all seemed particularly obscene to me and stuck in my mind. And seemingly there was something like 60 to 100,000 troops they reckoned had been killed in avalanches in these mountain ranges. So it was just one of those thoughts that always stuck in the back of my head, but probably I wouldn't have done anything with it if Charlie hadn't approached me to do this. I just imagined, well, chalks and charcoal, avalanches, mountain ranges. I thought, well, it's the perfect marriage of visuals and the idea and story. So basically we built a storyline around that.
I think one of the differences, you self-published this initially, didn't you?
Yes, we were that rash initially, yeah.
I think that's sort of the difference, as you were saying, that the market's changed now, that you can self-publish books much easier these days, so something like that would find a home quicker, certainly, than back then. I mean, back then, this is before the internet, or and printing was much more expensive back in those days. So yeah, I think nowadays it would be much simpler to do it now than it was then. But you know, we were young and ambitious and reckless, so we thought, well, to hell with it, we'll go for it. And it's always, to be honest, it's still to this day one of my favourite pieces of work I've got out there, and I think Charlie did a fantastic job on it, and it's still something I'm very proud of. Yeah, I think if you've not read it, it's worth
definitely
going and finding. Definitely, it's a wonderful piece.
Oh, thanks.
Now you're doing some work again, or you've done some work with Charlie on the Traces of the Great War book that's out later on in the year. Obviously, there seems to be a lot of links with that story to the White Death story.
Yeah,
was that intentional, I'm guessing?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's a sort of a follow-up of sorts. When we were approached about Tracy's, the anthology, and the brief for the anthology was to produce stories about, not exactly war stories as in stories about World War One, but stories that would focus more on how the First World War had affected the world since then. And initially, I think immediately Charlie and I had the same thought. Well, we've figured, I wonder if we could do something that ties in to White Death, and not a sequel as such, but something that even just thematically would tie in with it. And I just, again, fortunately, I had been reading a couple of articles in magazines about the regions that White Death was originally set in northern Italy, the Trentino and Isonzo mountain ranges. These articles cover the fact that with global warming and the temperature rise, the glaciers that cover these mountains almost for most of the year, they were melting further and further back each year. So even to this day, they're still finding the frozen, almost perfectly preserved corpses of soldiers from the White War, which is which is what the term that's been used to describe the warfare in the mountain regions here. So I just thought it was surely with a little bit of artistic license, there's surely a story to be told of a body being discovered in 2018 that harked back to 1918. And we built a little story around that. And our story is called Without a Trace. So it's even though the book itself is called Traces, I quite like the idea of trying to upend that, and because basically these bodies have been hidden without a trace for so many years. I tried to put it in. So I'm proud. I'm pleased with how it's turned out.
So we've read obviously your work and Sean and Ian Rankin's work, and both of them are really thoughtful. It makes you think once you've read them. So I'm really looking forward to the finished book and seeing what works in the whole thing. It's looking brilliant.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing it. To be honest, I'm jealous. I've only actually seen mine and Charlie's story. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing Ian and Sean's as well.
Yeah, no. If both the stories is to go by, that's how the whole book. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
It's an important subject, so you want to try and do it justice. Yeah.
Nikki's actually a bit upset with you, I must admit.
Yeah.
Before the interview, I also read some books, but I've had a book sat there for a few years now, which Nikki's only just recently read. Drowntown. Now, I didn't tell her.
Yeah, I know the question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, let's get the rant over. I didn't tell her there was no book 2.
I was so into it.
I must apologise. It has.
The book did get put down very, very suddenly when I was told there was no more when I finished it.
Yeah. Oh no, I must apologise. It's one of these things that happened that had suffered delays, which have become ongoing delays for. I can only apologise, I'm afraid.
That's to all your fans, everyone.
It's a project I'm really fond of, but it's kind of grind to a halt at the moment. I'm certainly hoping to be able to do something else with it further along in the future, but I can't offer you any hope of a new publication anytime soon, I'm afraid.
Well, I suggest you get your writing and send me the script. That'd be fine. Just so I know what happens.
Jim Murray's art in that, though, is stunning. It really does stand out. It's a piece, as a book as a whole, it is just gorgeous.
Jim's a fantastic artist. Partly one of the problems, and he's such a fantastic artist. He's in great demand, and has a full-time job as a computer games designer for, I can't remember the name of the games company, but it's one of the big games companies in Vancouver, and so he's just been caught up mainly in other stuff, and it's just to produce artwork of that standard obviously takes a long time, and I'm afraid it's just sort of it takes.
I'll read the script. It's fine.
Takes too long, I guess.
Obviously, we're going to see you, like you said, up at the Lakes Festival this year, along with a load of other Scottish creators. What is it you feel that Scotland brings to creators? Because all the Scottish creators we see create these wonderful worlds, and it seems Scotland really gives that passion and energy to the character to create. What is it you feel from being brought up in Scotland and living there that it brings to your work?
It's the weather. You're forced to sit outside and amuse yourself and come up with stories and come up with weird and wild exotic worlds and adventures, because otherwise you're standing at the window looking at the rain most of the time. I don't really know. Yeah, I think there's a good tradition of storytelling in Scotland. Mm-hmm. Anyway, why there's such a disproportionate number of Scots involved in comics, I'm not sure, but there's certainly a good few there, and some of them are even quite talented.
Well, we're thankful for it, that's for sure.
Yes.
Definitely. Right, one of the questions that's being asked this year at the festival as well, one of the panels that's going ahead, is people's favourite comic book movie. So do you have one that stands out?
Favourite comic book movie?
Yeah. It's a toughie.
Offhand, I'd probably have to go for the first Superman film, Christopher Reeve, which I think captures the spirit of the comic, and Christopher Reeve's just great as Superman and Clark Kent. It's probably that. Other than that, there's probably. I'm sure if you'd warned me in advance,
no,
more obscure and interesting, because I suspect everybody says Superman the movie.
Well, it's sort of with Superman, it's one or two, I think, isn't it? It's whether you prefer the first one or the second one. But Christopher Reeve as an actor,
they're one big film, really. They were filmed back to back, and it does tend to sort of they stand up together as one storyline, really.
But like you say, he as an actor just made that part his own. He really did.
Oh yeah,
absolutely wonderful.
Other than that, I'm sure. I'm racking my brains, but I can't think of anything else offhand.
So, what have you got planned for the future? Any particular publications coming out? Any ideas, new stories that you can talk about? I should say. No,
nothing. I've been sort of doing a bit of work outside of comics and stuff for the last wee while, but I do have a couple of projects lined up. But no, nothing I want to jinx by talking about them too much. I mean, hopefully Charlie Adlard and me have been talking about doing a new project. Obviously you have to grab Charlie when you can because he's involved in this juggernaut of The Walking Dead. But I think when he's also working on a French project at the moment. When he finishes that, we're planning to do something a little more substantial than the 8 pages that turned up in Tracy's this year. So I'm looking forward to that, and but otherwise watch this space, I guess.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. We'll see you in October.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. Well, say hello if you're passing by.
Yes. Yeah. No, definitely. We were. Yeah. White Death. I think we need a signature on that, as I say, because it's such an important book. I feel, especially with this year with the Traces of Great War coming out as well. We'll come and get a few signatures off you.
Yeah. No. Great. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Robbie. I will also go and read The Hornet.
Well, if you can find it, if you can find a copy these days?
I will find one before October.
You'll find it and you'll read it and you'll think, why don't they make comics like this anymore? Yeah. It was a bit like Action. Are you familiar with Action?
Yeah.
You're young for that as well. It was a bit like Action, but not as intense, shall we say.
Brilliant. I'm going to find it. I'm going to do it.
Are you? Okay.
Thank you very much, Robbie.
Howdo, welcome to Breakdowns, the comic art section of the podcast. I'm Pete Taylor. I'm a small press comics creator and illustrator. Online I trade as This Man, This Pete, and my favourite recent drawing was a gang of dirty, stinking pirate scum. A quick plug for me before we start. My comic Monster Kids is now available on Comixology. Lorenzo Etherington himself described it as ridiculous, madcap, ghoulish fun, all stirred together in a technicolor pot. Monster Kids reads like an insane Saturday morning cartoon. Search Monster Kids or Cat Food Comics on Comixology, only £1.49. Sad news of the death of Steve Ditko in June has prompted me to do a short profile of the legendary artist. Ditko avoided most interviews throughout his career. In a rare case in 1969 he said, "When I do a job, it's not my personality that I'm offering the readers but my artwork. It's not what I'm like that counts, it's what I did and how well it was done." I suppose because of this, I knew little about the man himself, even though I enjoyed his artwork and creations. Steve Ditko moved to New York in 1950 to study at the Cartoonist and Illustrators School. He had learnt his idol, Jerry Robinson, was teaching there. Robinson is credited with creating the Joker and Robin when working with Bob Kane and Bill Finger on the early days of Batman. After studying hard at the school, sometimes staying late into the night, Ditko began his career in the comics industry in 1953 at several small publishers before gaining work at Jack Kirby and Joe Simon's studio in 1954. As you will all remember from my elephantine Kirby profile, this was the period when they were riding high on the success of their romance and crime titles. Ditko began inking backgrounds before illustrating full stories for Crestwood and others. After a brief break in his career, when he contracted TB and recovered with his parents in Pennsylvania, Ditko returned to New York in 1955. He found employment, as a lot of artists did post-Wortham, at Atlas Comics, the forerunner of Marvel. During this period, Ditko worked on the mystery titles written by Stan Lee, such as Journey into Mystery and Tales to Astonish. The standard approach each issue would take would be a Kirby-drawn monster story to begin, a couple of twist-in-the-tail sci-fi or suspense shorts, and then finish with a surreal, self-reflective tale drawn by Ditko. The lead Ditko stories proved so popular that Amazing Adventures was altered to showcase the duo's tales. Created following the Marvel method, Lee said, "All I had to do was give Steve a one-line description of the plot, and he'd be off and running. He'd take those skeleton outlines I had given him and turn them into a classic little work of art that ended up being far cooler than I had any right to expect." Eventually retitled to Amazing Fantasy for its final issue, Lee took advantage of its demise to experiment with a different kind of superhero. He came up with the name Spider-Man and turned to the artistic partner with whom he had co-created the Fantastic Four, Jack Kirby. Jack came back with a 6-page tale about an orphaned boy who found a magic ring through which he gained superpowers and a web gun. It seemed likely that Kirby had this leftover idea from a previous pitch, but Lee found it lacking and too heroic. So he turned to Ditko. Again, it seems Steve was only supplied with the name. Ditko developed the costume, the clinging powers and the web shooters. He also stated that he gave Spidey the full face mask to hide his boyish features, and that sounds like he might have had a hand in developing Peter Parker too. Lee approved of this direction, although interestingly he didn't like Ditko's cover and had Kirby redraw it. Amazing Fantasy number 15 hit the shelves in August 1962. It was the best-selling issue of the series, and Spider-Man was spun into his own title. The Amazing Spider-Man number 1 arrived in March 1963. Immediately successful, the series rocketed along, introducing one of the strongest rogues galleries in comics, with characters such as Kraven the Hunter, the Lizard, and Dr. Octopus. Along the way, it seems that Ditko had started to plot the issues, and Lee was adding the dialogue when the pages were handed into production. Steve demanded plotting credit, and by number 25 he got it, but their relationship had started to become strained. Ditko eventually left the title and company with issue 38 in 1966. Trying to find out the reason for him leaving is difficult. John Romita Sr., the artist who took over the title, said in a 2010 deposition that Lee and Ditko ended up not being able to work together because they disagreed on almost everything. Cultural, social, historically, everything. They disagreed on characters. It is often cited that they fell out over the identity of the Green Goblin. Lee wanted it to be an existing character, while Ditko thought it should be somebody unknown to Spider-Man and the readers. However, Ditko later disputed this, saying, "Stan never knew what he was getting in my Spider-Man stories and covers until after production manager Sol Brodsky took the material from me. So there couldn't have been any disagreement or agreement, no exchanges, no problems between us concerning the Green Goblin or anything else from before issue 25 to my final issues." Of course, we're not going to forget the other work he did at Marvel before he left. Ditko also worked on Iron Man, the Hulk, and created that most trippy and psychedelic hero, Doctor Strange. Take a heap of Salvador Dali, add a spoonful of Eastern mysticism, and sprinkle with beatnik culture, and you have the master of the mystic arts, Dr. Stephen Strange. I'm a huge fan of Ditko's Doctor Strange. His design work on characters such as the Dread Dormammu and Eternity is outstanding. The the twisting, falling, tendril-filled landscape of the Dark Dimension is endlessly fascinating and foreboding. And I'm sure it's the fact that he created the visual vocabulary of both Spider-Man and Doctor Strange's universes that gives them both such a vibrant, occasionally creepy and malevolent feel. Like Kirby, his figures and faces have a mix of beauty and grotesqueness. His forms and figures twist and contort in a sometimes sinister way, but without the robust, heroic stature of Jack's work. Ditko's characters are more realistically proportioned, a little stretched and contorted, but more recognisably mortal. Throughout this period, Ditko had developed a relationship with Charlton Comics, a small Connecticut-based publisher who he regularly worked with until it folded in 1986. He created Captain Atom for them in 1960, and in the late 60s he returned to this character as well as creating the Question and revamping the Blue Beetle. A brief stint at DC in 68 brought the Creeper and Hawk and Dove into existence, but otherwise Steve worked exclusively for Charlton. In 1975 he returned to DC and created Shade the Changing Man, drew Man-Bat and Starman for a time, then back to Marvel in the late 70s. Ditko took over Machine Man from Kirby, with perhaps the last characters of note that he co-created during this period being Speedball and Squirrel Girl, although their fame and recognition would come much later. The latter part of Ditko's career saw him working sporadically for a wide range of publishers on short runs, covers or pin-ups. The New York Times wrote in 2008 that, by the 70s, he was regarded as a slightly old-fashioned oddball. By the 80s, he was a commercial has-been, picking up wretched work-for-hire gigs. He retired from mainstream comics in 1998, but carried on self-publishing his own small press comics. His most famous self-published character was Mr. A. Originally appearing in 1967, Ditko wrote a number of stories over the years, the last being published in 2016. Mr. A was Ditko's morally certain representation of objectivism, the philosophical system that he followed. Now this is probably the fact that everyone knows about Ditko. He's sometimes portrayed as a wacky recluse or a conservative hothead because of different interpretations of objectivism. For my own understanding of this, I have turned to the wonderful Fred Van Lent and Ryan Dunleavy, the team behind the comic book History of Comics, which helped me so much in my Jack Kirby profile. They have produced a comic called Action Philosophers, of which there is a free sample available on Comixology about Ayn Rand, the founder of Objectivism. They explain it much better than I can, but just to keep everything complete, here's my take on Objectivism. A person must use their judgmental power of reason to pursue and achieve their productive goals set and stuck to unwaveringly through their life. They must avoid and ignore individuals and societies that try to get them to compromise their actions and ultimately their goals. Ditko claimed not to have benefited financially from any of the films featuring versions of his characters. However, there is an article online which tells of a neighbour accidentally opening his mail and finding very large royalty cheques inside. I hope this is true and he was able to live comfortably while continuing to draw comics right up to the end. Thanks for listening. You can find me at This Man This Pete on Instagram and Twitter, or you can contact me or find links to my comics on thismanthispete.com.
Told you he was a lovely guy.
Really, and it was so interesting. I really enjoyed that interview.
It's good. So on the website comicartfestival.com, they now have the festival guide up to download.
Do it.
Beautiful. It's got your name in it.
I know, right?
On the Windows trail.
On my favourite number as well. I was well pressed. I'm going to buy a lottery ticket now.
Doesn't make sense. Doesn't matter. It's just a number.
Shut up.
Just a number.
Number 26, people. Number 26.
So we will start going through the events that would particularly stand out, what we're looking forward to, and just tell you a little bit about them. Mm-hmm. So the first one, we're going to look at evenings, so the Friday night and the Saturday night. Mm-hmm. So the first night, the opening night, Marvel versus DC, which is best? Don't give your opinion now because we're going to do an episode on it.
I literally was just going to say it then. I almost swallowed my own tongue.
If there's one argument that obsesses superhero fans all over the world, this is it. Which is best, Marvel or DC? But don't answer it.
No, don't say anything.
In the blue corner, DC, the people who started it all. They give us Superman and Batman. Without DC, we wouldn't have skin-tight costumes and capes. In the red corner, Marvel, the people who made it relatable. They gave us Spider-Man and Howard the Duck. Heroes with problems, and of course they gave the birth to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Well, now it's clobbering time.
Clobbering time.
Yeah. So they're bringing two teams of experts together basically to argue it out, hosted by Emma Viacelli. Mm-hmm. The teams will slug it out and battle and settle it for once and for all. It's got people such as Joe Kelly, Stephen Appleby, Kaiser Leaker, completely wrong probably, Peter Kessler, Dr. Sarita Robinson, Ed Brubaker, and others. Also, Luke and Steve McGarry will be live drawing as well. Obviously, it'll be characters that's going to
That's going to be funny at the same time.
They will also then be announcing the next comic laureate, taken from Charlie Adlard, 2019 to 2021, and the second Sergio Aragonis International Award for Excellence in Comic Art.
Yes. Is that going to me, isn't it? Thank you. I'll get my acceptance speech.
Okay.
Thank you, Mum.
You get it sorted.
Agent.
Where am I in this?
At the bottom.
Oh, am I the agent? Do I get the money? So this will sell out.
Oh, it always does.
Yeah.
And they are so much fun.
So, yeah, grab a ticket.
Yes, we must do that.
Yes.
We keep plugging it and we need to get our tickets.
So I'm burping a lot.
It's not nice.
The Saturday night.
Sitting opposite you, it's not great.
There's two events going on the Saturday. Well, actually, there's three events if you've got the pass. There's
the secret passes.
One Man Bond.
Oh yes, we're going to go see that, aren't we?
Yeah, no, I do want to see this. I've not seen this guy, but I've seen a guy do One Man Star Wars. So it's anything like that. One Man Bond, every film in 60 minutes by Brian Gorman. Over 200 characters, including all the Bonds, obviously. And if you're a pass holder, that's free. 7:30 to 8:30 in the Brewery Arts Centre. Get yourself a beer while you're there.
Why not?
Sounds like get yourself a beer, get some peanuts.
Your emergency exits are to the front and the sides.
Then we have Clockwork Watch. Now this is something different. This has not been done at the festival before.
Please let them abduct you. Please let them dress you up.
So this is an event at the New Union Pub, which they've not used for the festival before as well, because it's a new pub.
Well, it's quite a long walk.
It's the other side of Kendall. We say that like that's really long.
It's like what?
They've got specially brewed IPA.
We'll be there.
And a live band. And it's going to be a steampunk style event as well.
I know.
I'm
going to wear my ears.
Pass holders completely free. They're collaborating with the creators Yomi and Corey, who we've obviously had on this show. Artists Megan Bradbury and Kendall College to bring the story to life. So, starting in 2012 with a 9-hour immersion live event called Tomorrow's World, and it's part of that, essentially.
Yeah.
Immersive event is a way to look at it.
Yes.
We've only heard bits.
We have.
And it's a live comic is probably a good way of putting it.
A live story.
Live story, not necessarily a comic, is it?
It's a leak into our world of their world.
There will also be the Kendall Gazette will be published prior to the event, which will be stories about what's going on. And we're also going to get involved.
We are.
We're not sure how properly.
No.
But we're going to have some audio.
I've got a corset, it's fine.
We're going to have some audio stuff to do with this, which I've just emailed today, actually, to book a chat with the guys. So we'll be leading up to it as well in some way. We're not sure yet.
No.
So that is sounding different.
Yeah,
and
I'm really excited about it.
From what I'm only reading what's on here. There's more to it than that as well. So yeah. And then when you've done with that, pop along to the usual event at Ruskin's.
Yep.
No band this time. You've got the Dopes, which is a hip-hop style group. Mark Jackson and Nick Connors. That's 9:30. Then the inaugural, but not awful, Lexington International Comic Art Festival Stand-Up Comedy Club open mic between 10:15pm and 11pm.
Oh, so people will be nicely lathered by then.
So invite people to offer themselves up for humiliation and ridicule to 5-minute routine. Now, it's going to be compared by Paul Clark, who was at the event I just went to. He's done one a few months ago, a training event, and he's since done 6 or 7 stand-up shows, sort of 5-minute gigs.
You need to do some stand-up before we go.
I'm assuming, and I might be wrong here, that the director of the festival herself, Julie Tate, may well be up on stage.
This is because you've dared each other now.
Well, no, this is all arranged before me. This is nothing to do with me. I can't guarantee she will be, but I think there's a good chance. We'll see.
Keep buying her drinks on the night.
Yeah. And then following that, the festival karaoke. A bit of karaoke going on at Ruskin's as well.
We're doing that this time, aren't we?
Well, we've done that, or we're doing it at the closing party more.
Probably the closing party then, yeah. So we can embarrass the children.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. I mean, normally they just have what goes on the brewery, then the Ruskins, and you've got the New Union pub clockwork stuff going on this time as well.
Yeah.
Which is different. So different.
I'm really looking forward to it.
And say, well, more as soon as we've got more information on what we're doing in the sense of audio stuff beforehand, we'll let you know. So we've got some music to play you out. We've had Sean on the show before.
On our
with
first ever episode, I think you'll find.
Was it?
Yes.
See, I can't remember that.
You see?
This is new song, Kiss Me Twice.
Yeah.
We're in the video.
We're in the video.
I'll put a link to it.
Yeah, you got to watch us in the video. We're awesome. You'll be able to see how we run this very slick podcast.
It's on Facebook only, the video, but we'll stick a link up. You can watch us be tools.
I think you'll find we're stars.
Stars. If you like the song, go and buy it. I think it's £1 from Bandcamp.
Something like that.
Go and treat yourself. And check out Sean's other stuff while you're there. But other than that, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Enjoy the music, and we'll be back with Joe Kelly next episode.
Ooh.
Kiss me twice and tell me, baby, I know when I say I love you, oh, when I say I love you, oh. You kiss me twice and tell me, baby, I know when I say I love you, oh, when I say I love you, oh. Give me that one look of feeling. I'm full of disbelief in it all. I'm full of disbelief in it all. Yeah, 2 days ago everything was just fine, and then you messed up my heart, you ruined my life. Just 2 days ago it was all just fine, was all just fine for the last time. Kiss me twice and tell me, baby, I know when I say I love you, oh, when I say I love you, oh. You kiss me twice and you tell me, baby, I know when I say I love you, oh, when I say I love you, oh. Inside, yeah, you know I'm seething. You're lucky you're still breathing at all. You're lucky you're still breathing at all. Yeah, 2 days ago everything was just fine, and then you messed up my heart, you ruined my life. Just 2 days ago it was all just fine, was all just fine, but for the last time, kiss me twice and tell me, baby, I know when I say I love you, oh, when I say I love you, oh. You kiss me twice and you tell me, baby, I know, and you tell me when I say I love you, oh, when I say I love you, oh, you kiss me, oh.
Thank you for listening. Find out more about the festival at comicartfestival.com. Find out more about the show and how to contact us at comicartpodcast.uk. Find us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Music composed by Pop Noir.
This podcast is part of Britpod Scene, an independent network of uniquely British podcasts that's always growing. Check out BritpodScene.com or Britpod Scene on Twitter to find out more.